Good morning, everybody. Our chat is off to an incredible start. I'm already loving what I'm reading in there. And I was just doing some added research in a lovely book that I'm going to be able to give even more in-depth analysis of this full moon we've got coming up this week. So this full moon is an interesting one. Aren't they all now? Usually we're just like, oh, it's a full moon. It's a new moon. These days it's a full moon and then something's going on. And that has happened again this time. Something that does happen every year in different signs typically. So we will be able to talk about that and talk about the interpretations. And bonus, this is going to give us some insight into what traditional astrologers had to say about the nodes, the north and south node, which get brought up a lot in modern evolutionary astrology, but are a little bit vague in traditional interpretation. So we'll be able to get into that a little bit as well. I hope that sounds interesting to you guys. And if not, divert me onto another topic and we can do that as well. Today, and these live broadcasts are about you. I'm Crystal Sophia, astrologer and folk magician, and I like doing these live broadcasts not just to hear myself talk, but to share stuff with you guys that is actually useful and interesting to you. So that's what we're here for. So good morning to Jenny and Kristen. Just catching up here really quickly. Kristen had a great question already. Russ is here. Hello, BFFS 6182. Happy 1st of December. Erin Rose, good to see you. And Ren and Chrissy Baylor. Hi, guys. Good morning. So we'll kick off with the first question that we had. Kristen, I know you are incredible. You're here every week and you pop a question in and I want to make sure I get it first because I know your whole situation. So thank you, first of all, for your question. And this is a question to everybody in the chat too. I will read it out loud. What other holiday traditions of folk magic do you take part in? And in case you guys didn't know, this is a perfect question for what Em and I have been putting together over on the Alchemist Inkwell, our website there. I think it's actually, if you go to the most recent Alchemist Inkwell podcast episode, there will be a link in the description there directly to this celebration guide for tons of other traditions during this time of year that are not just your traditional puritanical Christian side of things. It also goes into deconstructed Christian traditions, if you'd like to get into them, the more Christian mysticism stuff, if you wanted to get into that, and like, why not? Let's break down that barrier. But also Egyptian stuff and Greek stuff and even Shinto traditions come into play here. So wherever you feel comfortable, whatever you feel led to, everything we've included in that guide is an open practice. So you'll be able to go through that, try all of them, try some of them. There are saints' days involved. I know we've been talking about Saint Lucia. I'm not really sure how you'd say that one. I would usually say Lucia, but I think it probably could also go Lucia, just depending on how they would say it in Italy, because I do know her story. But yes, so my personal thing, I still like to do Advent wreaths, which are much less connected to like ancient Christianity than you would think. It's a much more modern thing, and it was about anticipation, which I really love. You light a candle every week. You have this gorgeous wreath that reminds you, the circle of evergreens and the promise of just the cycle of life and the anticipation of better times and the anticipation that there is something good to hope for, that it will always come back around. And, just those pillars of like joy, love, peace, and those kinds of things. So yeah, that's one of the traditions I love. I love pomanders. Pomanders are another great thing. I have mine up all year round and I'm about to switch it out, which is good because it is looking worse for wear. I'll be switching my pomander out around the solstice. Simmer pots. I actually learned this morning that I get to teach my niece and nephew about simmer pots this Christmas because their mother has requested it. And I'm stoked because I definitely want to be that weird, they call me elder, non-binary aunt, uncle situation. I want to be the weird elder who's like, I bring you magical things from lands far away and teach you all the witchy things around the holidays and the turning of the seasons. And so far, I am getting to be that person. So I'm stoked about it. Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So simmer pots are another great tradition. And all you really need for a simmer pot is anything that is seasonal that can boil in a pot that will have a good aroma. The idea is typically the good aroma. So you can put fronds of evergreen branches in there, along with some citrus fruits and cranberries and anything else. I know a lot of people put rosemary in there, which I think is delightful. Cinnamon sticks, those kinds of things are fantastic. Truly anything would go in very well. The idea of this season of Simmer Pot is to, yeah, I know, I'm so excited, Kathy, is to really call in energies of abundance and those comforts, and the fact that we're celebrating around the solstice, the returning of the light in the darkest time of year. So this is really about the sun on its shortest day coming back into a period where it's going to regain some light. It's going to start growing in light during the day. So that citrus fruit is very solar, right? And so rosemary is sometimes considered a little bit more martial, but you can bring that in there too. And cinnamon, again, another pretty martial quality thing. But the things that bring heat, right? So we're talking about planets that are by temperament hot. And so it's what warmth are we bringing back into our season? And if you want to, you can actually save the water from that simmer pot. It becomes a really great addition to a bath, cleansing water for an altar. Anything you would use your moon water for, you could use your simmer pot water for. This is, of course, as we were talking about, one of my videos that went pretty viral from 2 weeks ago was the description of elixirs. And yes, the water from your simmer pot would be considered an elixir after that. And it's an elixir of comfort, warmth, joy, light, all of those things that went into the simmer pot. So you can have those too. And they're natural ingredients, as long as you make sure you have natural ingredients. So if you wanted to drink it, you could, but you could also use it for tons of other things. So those are some helpful ideas for your simmer pots and other traditions. I'm going to read the comments here really quickly. Let's see. Mercury is out of retrograde. Did you feel it? I swore. I mean, it was pretty close to my ascending degree. In fact, at the full moon this week, it'll be at my ascending degree. And so Mercury stationing right on that sensitive point of my chart, I felt that. I enjoyed it. I'm happy about it. Mercury does a lot of unseen work behind the scenes in my chart. We're closer than you would think at first glance in my chart. Mercury rules my lot of fortune and my midheaven degree and just all those things, and is pretty close to my sun. So there's a lot going on with Mercury that you wouldn't anticipate by looking at my chart. Yes, we are out of Mercury retrograde. The full moon is also coming up this week. That's what I want to talk about, like, primarily. I have the chart to show you. I have some fun facts to share with you and some good traditional resources to compare and contrast is really what we'll be doing with this. So that's cool too. Let's see. How are we doing here? How was everybody's holiday last week? Did anybody celebrate anything that they wanted to share? Kathy, I love these Monday mornings too. I'm glad you're here. The new background with the winter green. Yes, I picked those up yesterday. I like them. I like them a lot. They're a little subtle, but they work. I now have something for basically every season, and that makes me really happy. It's another tradition I do, is sort of redecorating the altar, bringing in new things. My home is now decorated for the holidays. Really, all you get to see is this tree, which is lit, but you can't tell because it's bright in the room right now. I've got a little bird back here. And out here, though, my hearth is over here with stockings for Dan, myself, Jack, and Zelda. Yes, we have all of them. If you want to see these things, I can do a little like decoration tour on my Instagram stories later today. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in seeing, because yes, we decorated our front yard and people have been enjoying it so much that we've had cars like pulling over and stopping. And yes, of course, the feature of the front yard decorations is a corgi leaping through the snow. It even has paw prints. It's so cute. So yes, decoration is a great tradition, right? It's surrounding yourself with what makes you feel comfortable in that time of year. Having the tree up is my favorite thing, just because it brings the room so nice and cozy together. We've been doing a lot with not technically real, but a lot of evergreen kind of touches this year. We've got wreaths all over the place and everything. This year, we finally kind of sank into the fact that, like, this is our house. We get to stay here. There's a sense of like security that we're coming into right now that we hadn't really felt before. And so we're like, wow, we can actually settle. It's been a very unsettling last few years in the Montrose Sophia household here. And now we're feeling like we're actually able to settle. So we're taking a little bit more pride in what we're doing. And it's a transitional thing still, but we're taking some really solid steps that make us feel good about it. You're going to be making abundance wreaths and lighting candles and doing Advent candles. That's awesome. My mother in law actually got Dan and me Advent calendars. One is snacks from around the world. So there's two snacks every day that we each get to do like a little competition of which one wins by the end. And there's a 12 days of Christmas candle. So there's 12 candles, and we're going to light one every other day leading up to Christmas. And that'll be fun as well. Stuff with candles and light, all of those things are really, really fun. Yeah. More evidence that people enjoy simmer pots, as we should, you guys. They are so cool. Oranges, apples. That's a good one, AJ. Um, you may have to go scavenging later today. Yeah, there's plenty. Usually it's stuff that we keep in our cabinets too. I mean, you may not have like the full cinnamon sticks. I do now because this has been what I do for years. But you can even just toss in a bunch of cinnamon like you would in your coffee or something. Cinnamon and coffee, guys. Underappreciated, but really good. um, Yeah, Jenny, I'm glad you're feeling happy. Hunter's here. You've been so busy humaning. What days was Mercury retrograde? Well, I'm glad that it wasn't, too in your face. Mercury was retrograde. Let me just get this right. It went direct on the 29th. And I think it was like the 4th of November or something like that, it was the 9th. So the 9th through the 29th of November was Mercury retrograde. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so yeah, I'll be happy to share with you some of my cozier aspects of my decorations. The hearth gets a lot of attention here, and my favorite aspect, of course, for me in being brought up in the traditions that I was brought up in, I have transferred myself from like the manger scene kind of thing to really focusing on the three wise men. They're my jam. They're my favorites because they were astrologers and I actually know likely how they did what they did. So I feel much closer to them as characters in the story than any other. No offense to Jesus, we do work together, but the wise men are my favorite. They're just so epic. So I do have some tributes to the wise men in my area as well. Hunter, I hope that it's not too chaotic. But yes, you survived. It's going to get better now. Cinnamon and hot cocoa, a very good call, AJ. Cool. So I think now may be a good time. Does anybody want to transition into talking about the full moon that's coming up this week? Yes, it is the last full moon of the calendrical year. I say that with a bit of an eye roll because January 1st coming from January or December 31st is a totally man-made situation. And I would say like a lot of things are man-made, but it's definitely not inspired by anything, right? So it's not like, oh, we're aligning with the seasons and this is when we begin our year, or oh, we're noticing the movements of the stars and this is when we begin our year. It's just a day that somebody picked. And yeah, M goes into that history really well. So we'll have to talk about that around the turning of the calendrical year coming up. You found your annual perfection through AstroSeek, and it was this year. Every year is an annual perfection, Jenny. So which number was this year for you? The cool thing about annual perfections is they are something every year. So like I'm in a 12th house year right now, and boy, am I. But you could be in a year from 1 through 12 and check out your chart and see all the stuff in that. I go into annual perfections really well. So your age is 32. So you're probably in maybe a 9th house perfection year. I don't have that wheel memorized. Yeah, so I do go into how to do your own annual perfections in the Pop Stars course that I have on my website that's up there now. And if you want to study annual perfections in depth, because you feel like you've got a nice grasp on natal stuff and you want to get really, really into it, I do host a research group on annual perfections and researching the technique every month that you can join us through via NCGR membership. So that's fun too. Yeah, but does anybody want to see the chart for the full moon coming up in Gemini on December 4th? Last full moon of the calendrical year, and then something a little bit unique happening at that same time. I thought it was, oh no, no, it's an all the time thing. And I did the math right. Yay, ninth house. Cool. Ninth house is traditionally the house of God, but don't worry, there is also a house of goddess. It's the third house. That is where a lot of higher learning, spiritual development, spiritual attunement, and your sort of worldview building really comes into play. Um, yeah, yeah. Ninth house is one of my stronger places too. It's also where astrology falls. Go figure. Cool. Chart. Cool. You're in 11th house. You're going into your 12th. Yeah. Yeah. 12th house is a great year for being a hermit. I'm going to put it that way. It's the closing of a cycle before the renewing of a cycle, right? So you want to let things have closure as they need to. 11th is the house of good diamond, which is good spirit. It's very, very lucky. So a lot of good things come before the 12th house year as well. And the 12th house year only lasts a year. I say, as I crawl day by day towards my next birthday. It's been a year, and your solar return has a lot to say about the quality of the year. So a 12th house year could be a better than average 12th house year, or it could be a bit of a struggle 12th house year. It really depends on how nuanced we get with your stuff. Currently 12th would agree it's been interesting. Yeah. Yep. Thank you, AJ. All right. I'm going to share the screen, and trust me, you guys are what get me through the stuff that's been going on in the 12th house year. It reminds me of, I was a Mary Kate and Ashley kid. So when they would do, I think it was their mysteries TV show, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Actually, it was our bedtime. And I just resonate with that so hard today at age 35, going through a 12th house year. Sometimes it's bedtime. It's been a lot of that lately. All right, let's pull up the chart. We are going to pull up the La 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 Luna chart here. I love the dog they have in that show. Yes. When they did the toys with Pizza Hut, I literally went around to different Pizza Huts to make sure I could collect all of them. I was into it. Literally left the hospital early after brain surgery because their Barbie dolls came out. So that's how into it I was. All right. So let's look at this lovely full moon here. She is full. We love that for her. And we're going to dive into this even more so, right? Like, let's do this the way an astrologer would do it. Are you guys ready for this? I'm going to try to take it step by step. If I start speeding through it, slow me down, ask me questions. I am here for you. If you like the pace I'm at and you're like, I don't really need to learn anything, I just want to know what the point is, don't slow me down and we'll go forward. So we're going to zero in on the moon here, because she is the focus. It is a full moon. And yes, the sun is involved, right? So the sun is over here at 13 degrees and 3 minutes of Sagittarius. The moon is at 13 degrees and 3 minutes of Gemini. And they are opposite each other, which means that the sun is able to shine fully on the moon. Full moon. Isn't that great? So we get to see the entire circle disk of the moon. Now, the reason this happens is, I'm going to get my little handy dandy visual aids. Imagine this one's the sun. Imagine this one's the moon, right? So if you have the sun, which stays the same all the time, and the moon goes around the earth, right? But we see it from the earth's perspective. So sometimes the moon is going to be facing the sun from this position. And so only half of it's going to be lit up because the sun is here. It's like if my ring light were facing me and I turn this way, the shadows on my face change. This is a full moon for you, right? If I turn this way or this way, you get a little bit more shadow over here. Same situation going on with the sun and the moon, literally the same situation. So what we're dealing with is a full moon when the sun can shine fully on the moon because they're opposite each other. And then half moons on either side. Those are actually called first quarter and last quarter moons. First quarter, because we're headed towards full. Last quarter, because we're headed back towards new. New, you don't see the moon at all, because if you were to look at the moon, you would get blinded by the sun. So don't go ahead and do that, because you don't need to see her anyway. She is in the rays of the sun, much like we see with the magnets here, right? You can't see her. They become one entity in that moment. And so this is a full moon. Full moons are really cool because whereas around new moons, we get the idea of let's start something new. It's the beginning of a cycle. We're opening up a new hoop, right? Here, we're halfway through. When you are halfway through something, and I know usually like if you're in a workout and you're like running 3 miles at 1.5 miles, you're not feeling like, oh man, I'm halfway there. I have so much clarity, unless the runner's high has really hit you. You don't feel like, oh, I'm halfway there. There's so much clarity. I understand things now. But you do feel like I've got half of this behind me. I have a rough idea of what to expect, and I know what to take forward for the other half. So there is this sort of maturity that comes into a full moon when we try to interpret it. Think about that when you're thinking about the full moon. That whole idea of releasing that comes with your traditional social media full moon posts is actually after the full moon. When the moon is full, we want to take advantage of that moment and say, how far have I come? What do I understand? That light, if that light were wisdom and awareness, what is my fullness of awareness at right now? What am I learning and taking in? And you can find that out for yourself very easily. All you have to do in this case for a full moon in Gemini is look at your own chart, which is probably going to be different than this chart, unless you, of course, you are a Cancer rising, in which case it's going to be very similar. You're going to look at the moon in your chart and say it's in Gemini. The sign of Gemini for me in my chart is in, if you're like me, it's in your 8th house, right? So I'm going to get all of this clarity in the context of 8th house topics. You can Google house topics and you'll find a lot of keywords that are good enough to motivate you and inspire you. Use them like oracle cards, right? They're not end all be all, but they're inspiration for you to be able to understand what's going on for you in your life. And so 8th house topics, I'm getting a lot of clarity in things that are changing for me, in someone else's story that impacts me, in my long-term investments and things that I'm trying to do that I'm taking small steps towards. All of those things could fall into the realm of 8th house topics. Now, again, Google the house topics because there's tons of keywords. I can give you the traditional like house things, but they warrant a lot of explanation. So go into it. And like, if you have it in the 12th house, if you are a Cancer rising, a lot of the stuff we talked about with the 12th house perfection year, what clarity am I getting on how I rest? What clarity am I getting on where I need to bring closure to things? What clarity am I getting on such and such a thing related to the house number that is where the sign of Gemini is in your chart? I do this for you already. If you go back to Friday on my posts on Instagram, YouTube, everywhere, I did a horoscope for you that asks a coaching question that is considering the moon in that whatever house it's going to be based on your rising sign. So if you go to my horoscopes and you read for your rising sign, I'm already doing the math for you. So that's how you can get access to that. Your moon is in Gemini, so you're having your lunar return for the month. And so that's the beginning of your own personal month. And it's something that may feel a little bit more personal to you because this full moon is going to be somewhere near your natal moon, right? So it's got that conjunction kind of quality. Instead of conjoining with the sun, it's conjoining with your moon and kind of touching on that space in the sky that is imprinted from when you were born. Think about your birth chart as a memory and transits as something that might trigger nostalgia, which is another very lunar thing, right? When transits happen, just because the moon is not still there from the time you were born, it was there in the memory, right? When you were born, the moon was there. And so it coming back around can remind you of those things, can reminisce those times for you. And so you might track how you feel or things that happen to you every month when the moon is in Gemini, and in particular when it's new or full in those places. It's going to be new sometime in June, late May, June for Gemini's new moon, and it's going to be full sometime in early December for the full moon because that happens annually. So you can track when that's going to happen. But throughout the year, every month, the moon will come there at least once. At the end of this, stick around. I'll tell you a fun fact about when you can anticipate having interesting dreams, according to the 3 books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa. So that's my tease for you. Okay, so back into the full moon. I think it kind of like a fingerprint. We all have one and it's unique to each of us. That is the chart itself, yes. And then when the transits come back around, it's like you get to fit your fingerprint into something perfectly, right? So perfect, yes. All right, so the moon is at 13 degrees. You may have already noticed, especially when I singled out the moon here, there's another symbol on this chart that is at 13 degrees. There are actually 2 of them and they reflect each other. And so this full moon is happening exactly at what we call the bendings of the node. Why is it the bendings? Because it's 90 degrees away. You can see this right angle here, creating a bending from the moon to the 2 nodes. And this is what I want to kind of bring up for you really quickly. I'm seeing Russ says, so treating the natal chart as an overlay on current progression for reference. I wouldn't say that necessarily. You're treating current transits as an overlay on your chart for reference. You are wondering what this is doing to you. So the chart is your baseline. And then if you remember those projectors from high school from like the 90s and 2000s, where they had that plastic overlay and they would put it over top of it and say, how is this different? How is it the same? You're going to play that game. That's one way to approach things like this. When you get really deeply into astrology, we learn other ways that are a lot more personal, but that's one way to think about it for the purposes of playing around with this topic. Gemini is your 5th house, and it's about pleasure, creativity, and self-expression, hobbies, romance, and good fortune. Yes. So excellent job looking for those keywords, AJ. Perfect. And you would say, what kind of clarity am I getting on those topics in your life? It could be one of them, and it could range through all of them in some way. Yeah, that was a Google. Perfect. It was a good Google. I like it. Not many times I get to say that was a good Google. So yes, good. So we're seeing the bending of the nodes. This is where I want to talk to you about the nodes. In modern, especially evolutionary astrology. Now remember, astrology has many different schools of thought underneath it. Just like languages have different dialects, astrology is a broad topic, and people have interpreted it in different ways throughout the ages. And so we see that the nodes themselves have been a topic of scrutiny for thousands of years. What the nodes are is an imaginary point in the sky that gives us a reference for when the moon is doing that thing that we see it do. So what I'm talking about is if you've ever seen those pictures of the moon and you see it's like the moon every day over the course of a year and it does that figure 8, the nodes are going to be when it's crossing from one into the other. Okay, so it's going to be at the nodes when it's at its highest or its lowest. North node, it's at its highest point. South node, it's at its lowest point. When it is crossing over that imaginary line in between, it will be at the bendings of the nodes. Now, the moon does that obviously more often than the sun does. In this case, it's unique because the sun is here too. So the sun is over here and we are at the bendings of the nodes. The other thing this tells us just by eyeballing is we are halfway between eclipse seasons, because the eclipses will take place when the sun is in Pisces or Virgo. And because the sun is halfway between them, we are at the bending of the nodes. We are halfway between eclipses. So that's something that we can say just by being like, ooh, we're halfway between eclipse seasons. We're going to be coming into another eclipse season in the next 3 months because the sun's here, it'll go here, it'll go here. Oh, other way, sun's here, it'll go here, here, and then we'll have eclipse seasons again. And that's how that works. So the moon is going to do that every month, which is why it does its pretty little thing. But having a full moon there is what makes this a little bit more amplified. Fullness, light is fully on. It's not dim, it's full bright. So full moon. So this is a full moon at the bendings of the nodes. I am going to read 2 examples of traditional sources we have for the nodes. And then I'm going to read you a very quick thing on interpretations if you have something looking like this in your natal chart, which I do. I was actually born halfway between eclipse cycles. So first, we're going to talk about Valens, who is one of our earlier source texts. Valens wrote in Alexandria a long time ago. Valens, according to Demetra George's Ancient Astrology and Theory and Practice, Volume 1, Valens explains how the nodes break down the power of the signs they occupy. In a discussion about inception charts, which is electing a time to commence an event, so it's like I'm starting something. That is the inception. He relates that when the moon is in the same sign as either node, the north node or the south node, or in a sign squaring that node, as we're seeing here, one must guard against the beginning anything, for the matter will not be stable or easily brought to completion. Instead, it will be inconstant, incomplete, or painful. And so that's from Valens Anthology, Book 5, Part 2. And so that's just saying that basically the bendings of the nodes are kind of like a retrograde for the moon. We could summarize it in that way. We're expecting things to be a little wonky. The moon is drunk, doesn't know what side it's on. It's trying to walk the straight line and it can't, right? So you can think about that. And again, I was born at the bending of the nodes. It's not super terrible. You can be fine and live a totally fine life, even if you have this in your chart. And we're going to see this week maybe some stuff that's unusual showing up because the moon is at this precarious place and the sun is lighting it up. Now, by contrast, this was not the only interpretation. Ptolemy presented a more positive view of the moon at the nodes and bendings. Ptolemy states that if the moon is at the bendings of the northern and southern limits, that's the north and south node, it helps with the character of the soul in the direction of greater versatility, resourcefulness, and capacity for change. The moon at the nodes inclines the character towards greater keenness, activity, and excitability. And so here, if you wanted to very generalize, which you shouldn't if you're looking at someone's chart, but for the purposes of explaining this simply, you could say this is like an indication perhaps of neurodivergence, right? We have the moon, which deals a lot with neurology and mental things, at the bendings, at this weird point where it creates this abnormal, unusual state of mind for a person. Now, Ptolemy seems to take what Valen says, this is my opinion, seems to take what Valen says and says, yeah, but we can work with that. And I like that, right? I really like the idea of saying, yes, this is a time where things are a little bit not as stable as you might like them to be, but that's where creativity comes in. That's where versatility comes in. So now we have someone who's not necessarily going along with the norms, but that doesn't mean they're a terrible person or that they don't have worth or things to look forward to. So some things to keep in mind. Now, Demetra does go into some suggestions for interpreting the moon. In this book, she does the moon at the nodes, which would be around an eclipse time, typically if the sun is there as well. And also the moon square the nodes. So let's talk about the moon square the nodes because it relates to what we're looking at here. If the moon is square the nodes, she is at the bendings. This is another point of intensity on her course where her path has taken her the farthest from that of the sun. The distance can give both objectivity as well as disassociation. At the north bending, she is at her greatest height in the above, but has turned and begun her descent toward the below. At the south node, and the south node. So she's going towards the south node. In this case, the moon is going from Gemini to Cancer. She is heading toward the south node. So that's what we're seeing here. At the south bending, she is at the depths of her journey, but is turning towards the ascent of the north node. The moon at her bendings can make dramatic reversals in her directions. So again, the idea of a moon at the bendings being kind of like a retrograde sort of moon. And that's what we get. That's the stuff. And now it comes to us to say, okay, I have this to base some ideas off of. Now I put it into practice. So if you want to research this, just pay attention around the full moon this week and say, wow, some stuff went not the way I would have expected it to go. Yeah, the moon's at the bendings. Or find out what else happens. So much of astrology still requires more research. So it's very helpful to think about it that way. So that's the moon at the bendings. Now, we've talked about her being at the bendings, things not going normally, blah, blah, blah. What would normal be in this situation? So let's talk about the moon as we would expect her to act in Gemini. So the moon in Gemini, the moon in Gemini is the moon in a mutable air sign. So honestly, that's a pretty creative and flexible place to be in the first place. Gemini can rule things like communication, like scribes, like writing, all of these things, very similar to Mercury, but not the same as Mercury. So we're thinking about Gemini as movable air, right? So it's something that can change shape, and air brings this intellectual quality to it, a lot of creativity, a lot of logic to it, this subjectivity that we can see. So with a full moon in Gemini, we would expect to see things around paperwork, around things that need signing, or around, you could even say like city planning, around the roads, around our connections, the ways we connect to each other. You might see something having to do with internet networks or things like that. So the full moon could bring around topics of communication, travel, and different kind of ways that we connect to each other. That's going to be very important. Writing is another way to do it. It's the communication, the messaging, and the getting from A to B. How do we get to each other in whatever capacity? So we would expect a lot to be centering around those kinds of topics. Now, you would specify that for yourself in your personal life by the house that Gemini is in your chart. So communication may be important to you when it comes to 12th house topics, right? Um, so think about how we might see it's almost like a little Mercury retrograde extension. I'm so sorry to say it. So how might we say if you catch anybody this week saying, I thought Mercury went direct. Oh my God, what the heck? Just be like, oh, well, the moon's at the bendings and it's full and it's in Gemini. So extended Mercury retrograde kind of vibes. And looking at that, right, you would say, okay, so the moon is ruled by Mercury right now because Mercury rules Gemini. Can Mercury see the moon to sort of give some anchor to that? No, no, Mercury cannot. Mercury is in a sign that is considered averse, which is like saying it's in the blind spot. If you think about the moon being in the head, the windshield of a car, it's going to have blind spots, right? Just like we do when we're driving. So Capricorn and Scorpio and Taurus and Cancer are all in blind spots. And Mercury, of course, is in Scorpio, one of the blind spots. The moon is also opposing not only the sun, but also Venus and Mars. So we've got a lot of planets talking to the moon at the same time. They are going to add flavor to this. The moon is also squaring not only the nodes, but that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which could add some confusion on Neptune's part. But the Saturn-Neptune thing has been really about blurring lines or giving form to things which had once been imagined. It's both, right? Saturn does structure, Neptune does the imagination or imaginary or liminal. And so when you see them together, they're going to combine. Either you're going to put a hard line around something that didn't have lines before, or you're going to start coloring outside of the lines. It's just whichever way it kind of goes in that situation. Both are available. So adding all of that towards communication and things, we're going to see that maybe this week we're seeing Venus bringing relationships into the topic. We're seeing Mars bringing bluntness, direct communication, perhaps a little bit of like the tension between Mars and the moon being I need to be understood this way, and finding some compromises there, making sure you avoid getting too argumentative. Arguments can be really helpful because they get you to actually be honest about how you feel. Just make sure you're arguing for a purpose, not just to be right. That'll be really helpful in a lot of situations. And then, of course, the square from Saturn and Neptune is going to say, okay, I'm hearing a need here, but what does that look like in reality? And that's some stuff that can really help you. As far as personal goals go, one of the things that I've been feeling about this one is we're not necessarily going to have the full picture for the where we're going. We're going to have the feeling that we want and maybe the next right thing, the next step to take, but not necessarily the full path unfurled just yet. So there's a lot of trust and leaps of faith that could come into that as well. Journal it out. Writing and doing all kinds of mercurial things or Gemini kind of things will help with this. Have affirmations that you use as spells. That's been something that's been really coming forward for me lately, is coming into that as well. Yes, that is my Frozen 2 quote. It has helped me through a lot of things. So I use it because I think it's really, really great. Yeah, so that is sort of what we're looking at when we think about this full moon. Like I said, there's a lot to it. I have a video coming out this week, today or tomorrow, maybe the next day, on YouTube that goes over everything as well. It'll be really helpful for you if you want to hear it in like a 10-minute kind of span rather than this more live broadcast opportunity. But there it is. So let me know if you have any questions on that. Let me know how you feel, if there's anything I can explain differently. Nicole says, can't wait to listen and actually pay attention to this later. Silly 9-to-5 obligations. I hear you. I feel you. I'm glad that this is something that you'll come back to. Thank you. Does anyone else have guests? Does anyone else have questions? Because we're all caught up for now. Thank you, AJ. Cool. So as we let people sort of process that and decide if they want to know anything different, I will go ahead and stop sharing the screen. Actually, do you guys want to hear the fun fact about the when to anticipate having nifty dreams? Because for some of you, it might be this week. I'll re-listen to this part, but it sounds like it's going to, with my moon placement, just some personal things that I will be moving forward with. This is good. I would agree. Yeah. If it's, near your moon, it'll be more personal to you. So you would be able to kind of lock in on some things. And I hope that you do feel that movement. That'll be really cool. Yes. So how to tell when you're going to, you already had an odd dream. You were pet sitting dinos for a friend. That is odd. Um, wow, that is funny. So when you might have auspicious dreams, there are 3 opportunities a month for this. Some of them are going to be really easy to just know off the top of your head. Some of them take a little bit of calculations. All of them can be done using AstroSeek as a free tool. So if you want, I'll also bring up AstroSeek and show you how to do it with that free tool. Let me know in the chat if you want that. I'm going to bring down this screen so I can bring up AstroSeek so we can use it. Okay. Actually, I'll start here. All right. So I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. So I'm going to restore my screen. I'm going to show you from the very beginning how to get into your chart in AstroSeek in a way that helps you find your perfections and your solar return, because these are going to be helpful in addition to your own natal chart. It is always a yes for me. Thank you, AJ. Okay, so we're going to share our screen here. Pulling up astro-seek.com. So this is what we're working with, astro-seek.com. All you have to do is come to astro-seek.com, and then you're going to click free horoscope. You're going to scroll down. This is where you would put your birth information, where it says enter your birth data. We will go ahead and just assume January 1st, 1970 at midnight is my birthday, and we'll say Washington, D.C. as a good generic location. So here we go. You'll calculate the chart. It's going to give you a chart. Don't settle for this chart. This is a Placidus system, and that's fine, but it's not going to give you all the other tools we're looking for this technique. That is, again, from the first book of the 3 books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to scroll down below the chart to related charts, and you're going to click traditional. That's where you want to be. That's going to bring up your same chart, but it's going to bring it up in a way that is the traditional style of reading a chart. So the first thing you want to pay attention to on your natal chart, which is the one that you've drawn up just by putting in your birth information, is your own 9th house. Your 9th house, whatever that sign is. It just so happens that if you were born at midnight on January 1st in 1970, whatever, you would have Gemini as your 9th house. That is one of the signs that every month when the moon is going through Gemini, you would maybe want to pay attention to your dreams, because you would have a really heightened opportunity for notable dreams. The moon being a traditional ruler of dreams, the 9th house being the connection to the divine, the traditional house of God. Again, there is goddess, but in this case, we're looking towards that connection to the divine. It's funny, in 9th house, we see astrology and the more like high magics, which is the more like particular kind of magics. Astrological magic needs a lot of fine tuning, a lot of details and specifications. Conversely, you have folk magic, and that's where the sign of goddess comes in, the house of goddess. She's like, hey, let's just make magic. That's where folk magic comes in. That's where your divination comes in. That's where all the stuff we get to do sort of more in our space comes in. So because dreams, we're looking for when will our dreams reflect a divine inspiration from somewhere outside of ourselves, we're going to look for the house of God, which will be the 9th house. So look at your natal 9th house first. Natal 9th house, in this case, Gemini, but what is it for you? For me, it would be Cancer. Next thing you're going to do is find out what profection you are in. So if you are in, this person would be in an 8th house profection. You're going to take that sign here. Let me make sure it's showing up on the screen for you, because it's not scrolling down for some reason on my YouTube. That's odd. So when you scroll down to the perfections charts, I don't know why it's not scrolling down further, because I can see me, but I can't see the thing scrolling down. That's super weird. So you're going to scroll down to annual perfections. It's the wheel with the years on it. Has it not caught up since I did? Oh, I know why. Okay. Hang on a second. We have a technical difficulty. Booyah. Okay, this is where we want to go. When you click traditional, it brings you here. You want to pay attention to your 9th house. Now we can scroll down to where it says annual perfections right here. And you're going to find the perfection for the age that you are. And so it's because it opened it in a new window. Weird. But anyway, we go to Taurus. Now we're going to assume because the year is perfecting to Taurus, that means the ascendant is handing over its responsibilities to the sign of Taurus. Taurus becomes the pseudo ascendant for this technique. So now you're going to tilt your head a little bit and say, well, what's the ninth house from Taurus? This is actually really easy to do. All you want to do is say Taurus or whatever is an earth sign. Gemini is an air sign, water sign, fire sign, whatever it is. And then go back to the earth sign in this case before it. So if we're at like Taurus, the ninth from Taurus, if we went all the way around, is going to be the fire sign or the same element of sign. So earth sign, and you could just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and find your way to Capricorn. Or you can say, I know that the earth signs are always in trine to each other and that the ninth house is trine to the first house. And therefore the earth sign that comes in the chart up here or around here is going to be it. Or you can just count to 9. I like to say, because I know trines in my head, it's easier to do the mental math to be like, it's either going to be Virgo or Capricorn, and Capricorn is going to be the one in the ninth house. Whatever works for you. In this case, Capricorn is going to be, for this year, this person's ninth house from their perfected sign. So now we're seeing Gemini from our natal sign right here, and we're seeing Capricorn from our perfection. When the moon is in Capricorn, you may also expect to have auspicious dreams. It's an opportunity, right? The last one we're going to look at is you come back up here to current horoscopes over in this section, and you're going to click solar return. One thing you want to, for this tab instead, there we go. So now we come to our solar return. And what you want to make sure of here is that we are looking at the year that you're in, right? This person's birthday hasn't come up yet this year. So to say 2025 would be wrong because their birthday is going to be in 2026. So actually, no, 2025 works. If you haven't had your birthday in the year yet, you're going to look at the previous year because your solar return goes from your last birthday to this birthday. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to, if you haven't had your birthday this year, 2024 to 2025. This one's January, so 2025 will work. But the website defaults to 2025. So if you haven't had your birthday yet, you may need to pop back. Depends. So because this person will be looking at their birth. No, we do want the 2020. They're still in 2025 now. Yeah, cool. See, it takes some thinking, but the rule here is you want to find the ascendant, which is hard to see because the moon's on the ascendant here, but the ascendant of the solar return. So I can do this quickly by just doing open SR standalone chart instead. And that takes your birthday chart for this year and just puts it where it needs to be. So again, yes, this person, this is going to be December 31st, 2025. This person should have taken a 2024 chart because they're not in their 2025 year yet, right? They haven't had their birthday yet. But anyway, for next year, they will pay attention to the ninth house from the rising sign of their solar return chart, in this case, Aquarius. So now we see that when the moon for them in the year that we're looking at is in Gemini all the time, because that's their natal, right? But then this year, Aquarius and Capricorn, because of their personal timing unfolding, they can expect the moon. When the moon is in those signs, they can expect to have auspicious dreams. So yeah, that came out really well. So in summary, let's do this again. So we'll share this tab. You're going to look at your natal chart and you're going to say, I'm going to pay attention to the ninth house from my natal rising sign, which is Gemini. Then you're going to look at your perfections and say, I am in a Taurus perfection year or whatever perfection you're in. I'm going to find the ninth house from that sign, which goes all the way around here and is Capricorn. This is only for last birthday to the next birthday, right? So for this year, we see that we are looking at Capricorn as well as Gemini. And then we come to our turn chart and say, on the chart for my birthday this year, the ninth house was Aquarius. So Gemini, your whole life, because it's your natal chart. This year, because of your perfection year and your solar return chart from your birthday this year, you're going to look at the ninth house of both of those, which brings us to Capricorn and Aquarius for this example. These three signs, when the moon is in those three signs throughout the month, you can expect, anticipate, or even request auspicious dreams. The end. We did it. Yeah. So that is how you can find when you are likely to have auspicious dreams, according to the three books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa, book 1, chapter 50 something. So that's how you do it. And that's a Renaissance magic technique that Agrippa listed. So fun stuff. And again, find out, right? Look at your 3 signs, what they are for you, and say, if this is the case for me, I should have interesting dreams when the moon is in these 3 signs: your natal ninth house, your profected ninth house from your profected sign, and your solar returns ninth house. When the moon is in those 3 signs each month, you should have interesting dreams, or you may have interesting dreams. If you find that's true, great. We have proven a little bit more that this theory is possibly correct. If not, okay, then we don't need to use that theory for you, right? So this is something you can do. Start journaling your dreams and start asking yourself, where was the moon the night I had this dream? And then you'll be able to do some study with it. So, and that's research, right? That's empirical research. We're collecting data. And then you can ask someone to do it as well, and ask all of your friends. And if everybody comes around and says, yep, I had that too, we start proving this technique correct. And if they don't, keep studying or get to a point where you feel like, I don't really believe in this technique. Ta-da, astrological research. The end. So thank you for bearing with me as we figured out all those tabs. But any questions? I'm happy to help. Awesome. This is a heavy learning episode right after Mercury goes direct, but we have that full moon in Gemini coming up. So learning is another really great thing to do at this time. If you're really interested in starting to learn something new, you might be able to do that around now, but you're also probably going to be asking yourself, how much have I learned in something I've been working on, likely for the past 6 months since that new moon occurred in Gemini last. So fun facts. Fun facts. This is how astrology works. Cool. All right. And that brings us to about 8 minutes left. And I am here for your questions, for anything that you guys want. Cool. Whew. Yeah, I hope that made sense. Sorry if it was a little bit confusing. Oh, Zelda has opinions. Cool. I wish that I could move my computer. I would show you guys some of the setups I've got going on here, but best I can show you right now are my little touches of holiday around my bookshelf. So things coming up this week that we are expecting. Okay, great. Thanks, Jenny. Things that we can look forward to this week. There should be a new episode of Alchemist Inkwell coming out today. Enjoy that. That'll be really fun. We'll be talking about the astrology coming up this week a little bit more, the full moon a little bit more from my perspective and M's perspective. Of course. So that is something to look forward to. Then Wednesday, we will have our cozy gaming night, which is going to be so much fun. I enjoy you guys so much. Cozy gaming and real magic. Last week we talked about Phalor stuff, and it was really cool how many opportunities we had to do that. We figured out how to use Wolf Link, so we have a buddy in game now. Looking forward to getting into that a little bit more. And then Friday, we will have the Alchemist Ink spill again. So we are back on our schedule. Jenny, thank you so much. I'm glad. I try to explain things in a way that makes enough sense to be useful. And then, if you ever do decide to get deeper into astrology, it gives you a foundational like, oh, so that's what that was, which helps the learning kind of move along faster when you've had some exposure to it to begin with. At least that's what I've found. I'm very much a person who benefits from the like, tell me what you're going to tell me, then tell me what you told me situation. So I'm the person that will do like a lot of reading before a class so that in the class I can be like comparing that to my understanding and then doing application work after. Jenny, the Phalor was great. The ads kept being rude. Yeah. It's what it is in that situation. I apologize for that. What we did find out is if you have a Prime membership, you get a free subscription on Twitch, which is interesting. So that's always an option if it's helpful. But yeah, everything is ad driven these days. Um, cool. Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful. And you know what I am doing is because we do have some people who subscribed, we keep a conversation going. And if I'm just like running through a field, I'll keep running. But I will slow down to make sure that people who are stuck behind ads can still come back in and not have missed stuff. Yeah. So thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, if there's anything that you want to talk about for these last 5 minutes, great. Or I can give you 5 minutes of your day where you can go and do some magical things because we are in the space now. This is one of my favorite times of year because we give ourselves permission to like slow down a little bit. And I really, really love and appreciate that. I think we need it more often. But I do like that this time of year, it seems to be understood. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know why my I feel like I've lost my voice, and it's funny because it's not like I've done anything over the weekend. Maybe I just haven't used my voice enough over the weekend. I had 4 days of very deep contemplation and quiet, which was hopefully productive. We'll see how it goes. But yes, I am looking forward to hanging out with you guys on Wednesday nights. Honestly, that's one of the biggest joys in my life right now. This is something that I love to do. Every opportunity I get to hang out with you guys is meaningful to me. And I do have some improvements coming to my setup, which will make them even more fun. And we have more games that we can play at some point too. Um, yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I will see you on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time over on Twitch, where we can do more with gaming. Bring your questions, and I will also bring my stories and knowledge as much as I can to keep it magical and fun. Thank you for your time, all of you. Um, oh yeah, I love that you notify yourself when it's time to decorate for Yule. We see you said Ren has a question. Oh, what is included in a standard chart reading with you? The 30-minute chart reading with me is going to be an overview of your whole chart, really focused on the question that you have. Because in that 30 minutes, I want to make sure that we are getting to the root of what your question is, figuring out what planets may be involved, and coming up with a plan of action for you to be able to move forward. In that time, I will be able to explain some things about your chart, especially if your whole focus is I want to understand my chart better. I'll go through your chart with you. And then I've already done a general sort of like theme of the year ahead situation. I'll have done your zodiacal releasing, your annual perfections, your circumambulations and distributions, your secondary progressions, and your transits and a couple other things like triplicity rulerships and all that other stuff. All of that is stuff that I've already done in my research before we even talk to each other, so that when I present to you, I will put it all together conversationally and make it make sense. When you do an hour long, that is more of like a month by month breakdown and any kind of deeper questions. If you feel like your question, you want more time to discuss it and plan about it, we can do that in the longer ones too. So yeah, that's what's involved. Thanks for asking, Ren. But yeah, I do like I guess it's 6 or 7 timing techniques, do a prediction, and I tailor it to the question that you give me in an intake form when you schedule. And then we talk about how to make it feel like that year is something that you feel ready for and excited about. Even if it's a 12th house year like mine. So yeah, my job is to be your best friend for that half hour and make sure that you feel like you know what's going on, to listen to you, to hear you, and to help you come up with stuff that's great. You can schedule on my website, crystallandsophia.com. You have scheduled for Wednesday. Yes, you do. Yes. So I will be researching your chart before we meet for about an hour and a half for the general one. And then it turns into like a 2-hour research session for me into your chart when we do a longer one. But it's fun. I like doing it and it's really great. So yes, I will see you then. And I'm excited. I'm so glad we get to talk. Yes, Linda, you can schedule your consultation with me on crystallandsophia.com. You go to readings, and I think it's like readings and more or something. And under there, you can schedule a reading. Yes. Patreon is another place you can connect with me. I do a lot of posts over there. Yeah, thanks, AJ. Cool. So I will see you guys Wednesday or in consultation this week. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a really wonderful Monday now that Mercury is direct. Bye, guys.